Hello everyone, and welcome to the February 2021 edition of the EPA's Insights interview. I'm honoured to be joined this month by someone who I've admired enormously ever since seeing her present with clarity and authority at a prepaid conference, must have been 7 years or so ago. Having had a 20-year career in payments as CEO at VocaLink, she brought Master Payments to the UK and then led MasterCard as president UK and Ireland. And she's now director of payments at Natwest, where 40% of the UK's transactions flow every day. So please welcome the chair of the EPA's Advisory Board, Marion King. Hi, Marion.
Hi, Tony. Thanks very much.
It's great to have you here. So, Marion, it's quite clear to everyone who knows you that you've achieved a great deal in your career. They also would say that you're somebody who's driven with a real sense of purpose. So, what do you think there is in your past that has motivated you to be driven that way?
Gosh, quite a lot of things really. But if I pick a business one and maybe a personal one, Tony, and if I go back, I'll go back pre-payments. I'll go back to the late 90s when I was fortunate enough to be posted out to Hong Kong as the managing director for Reuters at the time, through the handover of Hong Kong back to China. So back in the early beginning of 97, and went to Hong Kong with my two sons, who were babies at the time. I think they were one was baby, one was about 3, and my husband. And ran the business, and clearly because of what was happening, spent a lot of time in China. And I think what drove my purpose then was the realization, like at the coalface, of behavior and culture, and how it's easy to mistake the two, and how to operate, bringing the best of you to your job, but at the same time having to learn that what you'd learned in the past doesn't always apply. And so that's made me passionate about diversity and understanding and not jumping to conclusions. I had to unlearn collaboration and consultation because it didn't work in China at that time, And so it's really, really important to have that diverse opinion, diverse behavior, diverse backgrounds, which is really critical in our business. So that had a huge impact on me, and the phenomenal way that all of my colleagues embraced family was just amazing. Particularly when I brought my mother over, and that was just, she said to me, Tony, she said, "You know what, Marion, I now know how the Queen feels."
Wow.
Which was amazing because of how they embraced that. So I think that diversity of background has driven a purpose in me. And the personal experience, which has meant a huge amount, was as a young adult. I'm the youngest of 3 girls, and my eldest sister was diagnosed with MS in her 20s, and we didn't really know, and we didn't really understand what that meant. And then it devastated her life, and she passed away 30 years later.
Wow.
And so, that appreciation of what you have, but also my huge admiration for researchers. And so I sort of throw myself into supporting charities to bring the best of me, my connections. All that we can do is very incremental, but a lot of increments make a difference. And for my sister, the really hard thing was there was no hope. There was nothing. There was no treatment. There was no pathway. It was just deal with it, and that is devastating. And so having that pathway, having hope, having positivity, I think has really impacted me, and of course my other sister and my family, and has made me, very driven to add my increment, whatever that may be.
And this is, I think, is a privilege that many of us have, and few of us actually take advantage of. And I look at some of the other things you do outside your core work, because you're one of these wonderful people who, in an extraordinary way, whenever you seem to be doing so much, and yet whenever anybody seems to ask you for help, you seem to be up for providing it. And for example, you're a great contributor to charities such as the Multiple Sclerosis Society, where you're a board trustee, and somebody said to you, will you step up and help out there? And you have done. And that's wonderful. And you've also recently taken on the role of the chair of the EPA's Advisory Board. And little do you know, but I had the idea of you being the chair of the board about 3 years ago, and I only started chatting with you about 6 months ago. So it's been and it's been wonderful that you stepped up to do that. What was there in the role of, or perhaps of both the roles in both the charity and the EPA that appealed to you? And what are you setting out to achieve as chair of the EPA in the years ahead?
Okay, I'll just sort of finish on the MS side as a trustee. I just started my second term, and you're only allowed to do 2 terms in 3 years, and you're voted in by the members of the association, which are typically people who are living with or caring for those impacted by MS. And what could I do? I'm not a medical researcher. I'm not skilled in fundraising. I've not run voluntary organisations, but what I can bring is, I know a lot about risk management. I know a lot about, managing diverse teams of people. I've made the connection between Natwest Group and the MS Society, and we, pre-COVID, we had a fundraising partnership, and motivated and raised awareness within the bank. And the bank has 50,000 employees, and so that's a big network to tap into. So it's about bringing your increment, as I've said before, and joining people up and educating and awareness, which I think is important in business, in charity, and in life. And for the Emerging Payments Association, so I think it's really important that I recognise that I can add value. I don't just want to do it because it's a position I feel very flattered by, to be the chair of the advisory board. But it's my experience. I've been in the payments market for 20 years now. But there's more than that, Tony. And if I may flatter you, it's your enthusiasm, your optimism, your energy, and that permeates your business and the association. And I see it all around me in the industry. And it's just a tough industry. There's a lot going on. And we'll talk a bit more about the complexities. But to have that optimism and that drive, and to use my experience in bringing people together and bouncing ideas off one another and thinking things through, this is a network industry, and that's my passion.
Yeah.
And separating and being so overcautious isn't going to help this industry. I believe that collaboration is the biggest driver of competition. I don't think they're polarized. I think
there's a real irony in that, isn't there? You'd think that collaboration would be the opposite, but it actually doesn't. It enables it.
Yeah, it feeds it enables it, helps it. Yeah, and then we learn as an industry our role, depending on who we're representing and who we're working for, but also as individuals. And I think that's what you and I have talked through, Tony. And I think it's about the people. And bringing in their backgrounds and that diversity of thought, diversity of background,
Yes.
And I really mean that about background, and I remember when I joined Reuters, and there was this sort of, I called it at the time intellectual snobbery, but it was this Oxbridge air. And there are so many talented people that have had a different upbringing, different background, different opportunities, and that's really important to me. So EPA, I love the industry. There's a lot going on. It's very diverse. There's a lot to think through. My passion is about connecting. And here's another opportunity to do that and to help you.
It was brilliant last week. We had our first ever advisory board meeting of the new blood. We bring new blood in every year. And you know what? I can't tell you, I had great fun. And I reckon everybody did as well, because there were ideas flowing, and you're the great catalyst for bringing things together and getting clarity about focus. Because, this is a labyrinthine, a huge, as you said, complex industry. And, deciding what should be the community's, what the representative body should be focusing on, I think is really difficult. And to be honest with you, I don't think we've necessarily got that right in the past. So the advisory board has chosen to focus on 5 areas in 2021, 5 main ones, and some.
Yeah.
Would you be able to share with the listeners what sort of things we're going to focus on this year?
Yeah, of course, Tony. And all of these things interconnect and yet are very different. And so the first one is open banking, the world of APIs and all that that brings. And if you expand the thinking around the potential of API technology and what we can do, whereby a third party can access a bank account with the customer's permission appropriately and aggregate and analyze and connect, wow, you know,
It's
the business model, the business model's blown apart. But of course, at the same time, we have to consider, you know, that framework of safety, security that we have to have around payments, and those tensions between open banking, you know, and real time and streaming, coupled with fraud and when it all goes wrong, you know, and how do we manage those tensions? So we're going to focus on open banking. Really look at the use cases, how it works, where it works, what are the barriers, how could we bring parties together to manage the challenges or the problems, and really share ideas and promote open banking. And the reason I think it's really important is the UK's got a march on this one.
Yeah.
You know, I think through the Competition Markets Authority, through galvanising the foundational members, we got on with it. We got on with it. Now we've got to allow it to find its place in the market in an appropriate way, at the same time as considering the other things. So we've got some open banking experts on the advisory board and certainly in members, and we've got those thinking about it. And how magical is that? Bring the experience with those that are thinking about it and share, you know, share knowledge, share ideas, share experiences. Because I think in the current world, I'm thinking in a post-Brexit world, being competitive, being open for business, as we say, and ensuring that we can be ahead and lead the market in payments, I think is really important. And we've got a real opportunity with open banking. That leads me to international. It's kind of interesting, I think, when you look, and I look at real-time networks, and when I was at VocaLink, we launched faster payments, but it's always geographically bound, you know, and then it's just a pain to try and transact, you know, just across the water to France. And, you know, in the days when we could travel, of course.
Yes.
But international payments should be as free-flowing and as capable as domestic, and they're not.
Yeah.
And there's a big opportunity there. And isn't it interesting that post-Brexit, the first thing we're seeing is prices going up?
I know.
Yeah,
I mean, in a way, haven't we been saying this for a long time?
Yeah.
And then within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's up we go.
Oh, yeah. And all sorts of niggles are happening in the payments flows, in terms of different banks interpreting it different ways or taking a different view. So who suffers? The customer, because it's not as free-flowing and as straightforward or as cost-effective as it was previously. So all of that's got to be ironed out and worked through. So having this international lens, because payments are global, but there are no geographical boundaries. Technology doesn't have geographical boundaries, and yet we do, and that really doesn't make sense to me. Third area is regulation. Essential, critical, you know, it's our safeguard in terms of protecting consumers, protecting customers, and beating our enemy, which are the fraudsters, you know. And they're there. So the weakest link in any part of the payments chain, they're in, you know, and it's costly and it's challenging, and we have to work together. And I'm also passionate that, to me, fraud protection, particularly as a bank, shouldn't be a competitive edge. We should all learn from each other, get the best, work together, achieve the best, because we're not competing with each other, we're competing with the fraudsters.
But it's also interesting when we look at the regulations or the regulators, how difficult it is to be a regulator, especially in times of stress. And I look at some of the things that the regulators looking at the moment, particularly the latest one is the Treasury's consultation on the insolvency of EMIs and PIs. And I know it's a relatively small part of the industry, but it's important. And I know it's not going to happen very often, but if you're not careful, you make a tweak in one area and it has a whole domino effect on other things. So first of all, I think it's about not rushing, isn't it? But also helping them to help us.
Yeah, it's challenging, and even then, if you look at secure customer authentication on PSD2, the different levels of interpretation, the different assumptions that different institutions, which I think goes back to that piece about culture as well, will take. And it's challenging because you can create mayhem if we all adopt it in a different way. So it is hard, but incredibly important. And so this constant dialogue, this constant sharing, this constant rethinking is really, really important.
So what about something that we've been talking about for some time, but is still a big problem, which is financial inclusion? That's another of the EPA's themes this year, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think working in Natwest, I've seen that at every level. And I think it's financial inclusion, Tony, but I think for the payments industry, it's digital inclusion as well. Look what happened through the pandemic. Really, really interesting. Online up, contactless up, cash checks down. And so people have made that shift because they don't need to leave their home. And yet, of course, there will always be elements of society that, for a number of reasons, cash is the transaction tool of choice, and we have to support that, and we have to provide that, and we have to help those who can't or don't use digital means to transact. We have to do that. It isn't about a cashless society. It isn't that. It's about helping that transition, supporting that shift in behaviours, and managing that safety and security that we all know is really important.
Yeah. And
so payments isn't just about the future, terribly important, but it's the here and now as well. And isn't it? And both you and I think, feel really excited when we see how well the payments industry has responded in this pandemic.
Yeah.
And when I was dealing with it, getting 1,000+ people working from home, and all the things that we had to do, and it all just happened, and we made it work, and everybody was in it. And now it's sustaining that, which is of course quite challenging in itself.
It's such a historic time, isn't it? It really is, and I'm with you. I'm very proud of the industry and how well it's responded, and it's done things that I think perhaps it wouldn't have done in the past. So, for example, the theme of collaboration you mentioned, and you also talked about the future. So, trade associations quite often bump up against each other, and they try and define their territory. I don't have that attitude, and you don't either. I think the more we can support and help each other, the better off everybody will be. So with the recent work with the Treasury, we've been working with them, but we've also been working with UK Finance, who you've done some brilliant work in the last year to help our industry think about what the future will be. Can you share a little bit about that? Because you've got an announcement to make, I think.
Yeah, I can. I've been chairing a strategy group within UK Finance. And that group, again, we've tried to get as diverse a contribution as we can to think about all the key issues that the industry need to think through over the next 10 years. I've just renamed it, actually, and it gets launched on 4th of February. It's called Future Ready Payments 2030.
Oh, nice. Very good.
A dynamic, purposeful and united agenda for the UK. And I picked those
words. It. Really like it.
Thank you, because they're words I think that really resonate for us. And we've had over 100 individuals give their own time, their own expertise, I think representing something like 40+ institutions or companies. And we started off looking at 3 key areas. So we looked at infrastructure, global infrastructure, what is happening, ISO 20022, global standards, data streaming, data analytics that will come through that, standards, interoperability that global standards enable. What does that mean? And so it goes on. So we've had an infrastructure arena, we had a consumer protection arena, looking at the inconsistencies across the market. What does the customer do? How do they know? I've just been helping a relative of mine who's just recently widowed. She's 80, and she was scammed for £7,700.
Oh,
yeah, I know. and she's, intelligent and capable, but just confused, And so, how do we stop all of this? How do we drive all this? And I've lost my flow, Tony. What were we talking about?
Well, we would talk about this is the UK finance.
Sorry.
Talked about infrastructure.
Sorry. Yeah. So we looked at consumer protection, and then the third area was digital and all that digital means: digital identity, cryptocurrencies, digital inclusion, and the report now is 9 key themes and 24 recommendations. And those recommendations span that arena. And it has to be a living document. It has to be something that is constantly fed into. There are new things coming through, our approach to cloud and cloud storage as an industry, standards and a standards forum, and how do all of these things fit together is going to be really important. So we're doing that. We've triggered that.
Super.
The key thing is the level of participation. It's been and collaboration, and people have enjoyed being part of it, which is important.
Generally collaboration is enjoyable, fortunately.
Yes.
And it's fun. It also happens to be profitable, and actually it's something that allows us to make a difference too. So for all those reasons, we fully support the UK Finance Initiative, and I'm sure the EPA will be able to help to
absolutely
delivering some of those things.
Yeah, and the organisations are different. They have different focus. They come at it from different angles. They have different members. Some overlapping, and that's the magic. And there's mutual respect, mutual regard, and let's not duplicate. Let's divide and conquer. Really.
So when it comes to the future-ready payments vision that you have, where does sustainable finance fit in? Because that's something that David Craig talked a lot about in the Insights interview last month.
For me, sustainable finance and sustainable economics is critical in the payments industry. We've seen this explosion, we've seen more competition, we've seen more innovators, which is fantastic. And yet, you just mentioned, Tony, the Treasury review on insolvency, and payment companies and e-money providers. We know margins are being squeezed. People talk about the race to zero, and yet we've got big investment requirements. RTGS is moving to ISO 20022. We're renewing our central infrastructures. MPA is on the agenda. These shifts, these changes are on the agenda, and there are costs involved. And in a world of appropriate world, of free and credit retail banking, payments are free, and we enjoy that as a society. But how do these things all fit together, and are they sustainable? Businesses are struggling. Other areas of the value chain are doing very well. Is there an approach here to look at that distribution of value across the value chain? And where is value? And how do we ensure that all of these elements play together? Not because people want to necessarily make more money, but because we have to look at sustainability. We don't want payment systems failing through lack of investment. Yes. We have to ensure that the investment streams can flow appropriately, and that value chain is fair and equitable as well.
And I mentioned how historic our time is that we're going through at the moment. I wonder whether that will be part of your legacy, will be helping our industry to shift more towards a sustainable mindset. In light of the work you're doing with UK Finance, I'm very excited. You're somebody who touches people and influences people as you go along, Marion. I'll never forget when I felt I was very brave to ask you out for lunch. We went to the Shard, must have been years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And you gave me some very clear advice because I asked you for it. And you said, this industry needs a catalyst like the EPA to step up a little bit and take a broader perspective and be a bit more ambitious. And that was career influencing, career changing for me. And I think our community has benefited and we've all benefited from that. When you think about the people you meet, and you meet a range of people in your journey, if you were to think about what you would be saying to somebody joining the industry today, what would your advice be? What would your tips and advice be?
Gosh. I would definitely say good decision, because it's very dynamic. And the payments industry is growing. A lot of industries aren't. The payments industry is growing. So this is a good place to launch your career or establish your career, or as I did, shift careers. You know, I'd had a 14-year career at Reuters. I'd done a startup and sold it. You know, I'd had other elements and then entered payments. So that's the first thing. And then I think I'd say, I think probably driven by being the youngest of 3 girls and having a very strict father, you know, watch those before you, learn from those before you, but work out your own strategy. And I think if you think about what I was saying, that we're always in a state of transition in payments, we've got to worry about today. You know, I've got payments flowing through the bank now. You know, we have to worry about today as well as that 2030 vision. So I think my advice would be, you know, insert yourself in today. Put your personality, your views, your passions into today and every day. And don't sort of think, well, in 5 years' time, maybe. Yes, plan your career, but it's the now that really matters, because that's what you're going to be recognised for. And in payments, that there's never more truth than that, because it is happening right now. The reason payments is so important and is a critical national infrastructure is because we all do it every day. And companies rely on it. We rely on it for trade, we rely on it for money flows and all of the allied services that support that. And so it's super critical, very exciting, lots happening. Choose your part. You know, when I look at the agenda, some days my head is just exploding. Oh my God, you know, banking, global standards, cryptocurrencies. Yeah, how does this all piece together? So if you could connect ideas, connect technologies, connect people, organizations. You know, I say in Natwest we have a marketplace here. We are in a very privileged position. We have corporates as customers, SMEs as customers, government departments as customers, consumers as customers, associations as customers, and we have a marketplace. So form that connection as best we can, and I think that would be what I'd say. Just insert yourself in today. You know, you as an individual and what value you can add.
And you know, but I think about what you said right at the very beginning about being able to make a contribution in some way, and we all struggle and work out how to do that. You certainly are making a big contribution to our industry.
Oh, thank you.
Sadly, we're coming to the end of our time. It's been a privilege and an honour to talk with you, Marion. Thank you so much. Marion King from Natwest, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony.